Very good afternoon to all. I should start off saying, "Ella program okay." That's what I always say. Everything is due to God, and apart from God, I should thank two people, three actually, two of my gurus who I really consider guru. One is Dr. Muthukumaran, who's been part of my development since I started in India, and also Dr. Nagesh Rao, who's been in my back for long. And I just need to acknowledge their help. And last but not least, my surgeon, Dr. Neil Solomon, who has been part of me since my growth and all my success. I attribute to him. Thank you, Neville. So I'm so proud to be associated with MyVal since its inception into India, and very proud that we have introducing a valve from India to the world. Then my disclosures. I move on to the MyVal structure. Basically, it's a cobalt chromium frame. It actually comes from 1721 in length, and you have two portions. Upper portion has got bigger squares, and lower portion is small squares. And you got a covered portion in the bottom half, and the uncovered portion is the top half. It's just more useful for aortic position. We have done more than 3,500 implants around the world. The 300 is just a previous slide. 3,500 implants successfully implanted around the world, and I've been associated with all valve positions in India. So with this, we actually published a first transcatheter pulmonary implantation about 2 years ago. After this, we have done quite a lot of work in transcatheter pulmonary implantation. So I'm going to just show a value box of a case of transcatheter pulmonary implantation in stented RVOT, and then we come back to non-stented, native RP. So today, we're going to show a transcatheter pulmonary implantation as a live case. The history goes, this child, who's a 15-year-old now, was diagnosed to have tetralogy fallow at 6 months of age, for which he had total correction done, and has been under follow-up since then. On follow-up, was noted to have valvular obstruction, which progressed gradually, and 2018, the echo showed severe RVOT obstruction, for which we did initially balloon dilatation. But on 2020, when we repeat the echo, the obstruction recurred, a significant gain across the RVOT, and we decided, after discussing surgeon, let's stent it off first. Anyway, we're going to go for a transcatheter pulmonary implantation future. We're going to stent the RVOT first and plan for a transcatheter pulmonary implantation in the future. That's our plan. So we took him for an angiogram. This angiogram shows a significant RVOT obstruction. The RV pressure was systemic, and the proximal PA we measured 20 millimeters, and the narrowing measured 8 millimeters. We decided to dilate the RVOT up to 20 millimeters. Before that, we checked for the coronary obstruction on inflation, because sometimes when you do this, you have to make sure there is no coronary involvement before putting a transcatheter pulmonary implantation. So we took a 20 mm balloon, ZMED balloon, opened across the RVOT to a full inflation and checked for the coronary arteries. They're flowing beautifully well, so that we went ahead with implanting 45 millimeter NuMed CP stent. We prefer NuMed CP stents in RVOTs because they have a good radial strength. We don't recommend any other stent because they can prone for fractures. So for RVOT obstructions, post-tetralogy fallow with a dynamic RV, we prefer using highest radial strength stents like CP stent. So once we took this 14 French across RVOT, we took the stent assembly, then we balloon dilated it up to the maximum, and the stent conformed well, and there was no obstruction. There was a free PR noted after the stent implantation, which we accepted it, and RV pressure came back to normal. We are now here in 2021. The child is still waited from 2018. We're going to go ahead with a 23 millimeter MyVal implantation in the RVOT. So this child is being anesthetized. We do all pulmonary implantation under general anesthesia, and this has got a neck access for emergency drug administration, and also arterial line for blood pressure monitoring. For a stented RVOT, we use two access sites, one right femoral vein, one right femoral artery. For an ATPA, we have both femoral arteries and both femoral veins, which I will discuss with you later on. So we have got the right femoral artery, right femoral vein. So we're going to proceed with the balloon dilatation of the stent once more with an nutless balloon. Once we have done the balloon dilatation, then we are ready to go ahead with the transcatheter pulmonary implantation. We are planning to implant a 23 millimeter MyVal in this position. Okay, let's proceed to the cath lab now. Good morning, everyone. So we have got access here. So usually whenever we do a stented valve, we just need an arterial access to monitor blood pressure because we already assessed the coronary arteries. There is no obstruction of coronary arteries on bowel inflation initially. So we are implanted 22 mm stent across RVOT. So we're going to plan to go 23 valve. Since we have no coronary obstruction, I'm not going to check the coronaries now. We got two venous access, one for pacing, one for implantation. We'll go ahead with this implantation process. This is the most crucial step of pulmonary implantation, to have your wire deep inside the LPA. A Johnson's guide with the thermo wire and the Lundercust wire. We have to anchor this wire deep inside the LPA. That's a major trick of getting a valve across easily. Inflating it to 20 mm with the Atlas balloon. Put it. Okay, deflate. This is a Python sheet, which is going to be a 14 French configuration. But you can see this bit there. That's an expansile thing. It can go up to 22 French, and the idea is it will allow the valve to go through and expand only at the point of valve, and so the valve injury is minimum. One more important thing about this Python valve is, in case we cannot deploy the Python, it can take the valve back. Something unique of Merrill. That's very important, because when you can't deploy the valve, you can take it back. But in your Sapiens valve, you're supposed to deploy the valve in somewhere IVC. So here if we can't deploy, we could take it back. So that's the MyVal. It's made of cobalt chromium stent frame structure, which has got a pericardial valve. You can see the pericardial valve leaflets there stitched. And there's a small skirt. You can see white skirt down below that shows the direction of the valve. So for a pulmonary valve, the skirt should face down, so that the valve opens at the top. So for aortic valve, you should do other way around. And so there's a structure above. There's a bigger squares are not covered. The square down below is covered stent is there. So this is the one we're going to use. It's 23 valve. We designed a 22 balloon. So we're going to take a 23 valve with 2 mm extra. So if you want to see this valve orientation, we have to check. You can see this is a skirt down below. You see the skirt down, white is a skirt, which means that valve is going to open this way. So if you do other way around, valve is opening other way around. So you have to make sure the skirt is down for a pulmonic valve. That's Dr. Sangatolo. We both have done more than 150 aortic valve position valves, and been partnered since last 3 years in valve implantations. That's the valve been inflated. I don't use pacing for stented RVOTs. But when you come to an ATPAs, I tell you how we do it. So that's basically you have got full inflation. Sometimes quite difficult, and for few moments of volume, you have to give some force to get it done. The post-posterior angio will be showing right away there is no PR. You have to immediately take this navigator off, because the valve will function only when navigate is away. So you can see there is no PR and there is no obstruction across the valve. And I'll show the echo. You see, we have implanted the valve across this RVOT. The echo shows good valve movements. There is no pulmonary regurgitation, either paravalvular or valvular. And there's no obstruction across the valve. There's no grain across the valve. Cat grain, there's no grain across. Okay, just proceed. Actually, this is in the stented RVOT. I'm going to show first native PA in my valve. So she's the 16-year-old lady who was referred to me for a pulmonary valve implantation. She had atolli valve operated as a child, and she did well post surgery and has been under follow-up. And then she had 2 children and has been under very good condition. But When she actually presented to me, she was having severe symptoms with breathlessness, palpitation, uneasy fatigue. So, what we did is we did ECG echo. Okay, it's fine. ECG echo and MRI was done, and she's suitable for just needing a pulmonary implantation. But the surgery was high risk. We thinking of a pulmonary transcatheter pulmonary implantation for her. So the actually important thing before you do pulmonary valve implantation is doing a CT scan. You should have experienced radiologist like my radiologist Dr. Jishan, who does all my CT scans. So looking at the entire RVOT and the PA to look for position where you have a narrowest diameter. That's what it means landing zone. For this lady, we found a landing zone at 20 mm. So we thought we should do a transcatheter pulmonary implantation. So what we do all cases under general anesthesia, we ask right IJV and radial for the anesthetist. 4 accesses we for the groin, right femoral vein, the principal access for the valve, right left femoral vein for RV angiogram, left femoral artery for IV pacing, and right femoral artery for your coronary work. So we always do this implantation under pacing. We should have an undisturbed catheter, pacing catheter, because if you have an RV, it can be disturbed. I always have it in LV for no disturbance, because pacing is very important in this implantation. So the hardware is just given. Basically, you have important thing, a 7-inch guide to get your Landakas wire deep inside LPA, and the covered stents as a backup. So this is just a list of the order you require. So this is the angiogram pre. I do under RAO 30/30 and the lateral view. So looking at we can see a free pulmonary regurgitation. We identified a landing zone. The important step is going to go for getting the Landakas wire. You can see the Landakas wire is getting deep inside the RPA. Once it's done, the LPA, you have a good position, then you can easily deploy the valve. So here they do a balloon dilatation. You see the balloon being inflated, and you can see the LV pacing catheter, and also RV angiogram is done simultaneously. There's no forward flow, and there is a mild waste. And these two things should be there for a transcatheter pulmonary implantation. If you don't have this, we don't do it, and the coronaries are flowing beautifully. Then what we do is we check the position and then place the heart at 250, slowly inflate the valve. Halfway through the valve, what I do is do one more injection, making sure the valve is in the right position, and then they go for the final implantation. Now we have checked again, and we know that we are across the narrowest point, and so we just go to maximum. This is 32 mm valve. We implanted to the full volume, and once implanted, you can see the valve in position. We take the navigator off, we check the coronary arteries, they're normal. And this is the post-procedure angiogram showing good result. So this is the first case we've done, and we have 9 cases we've done after this. This is echo post-procedure, and she was extubated on table and discharged next day. Interestingly, she had atrial fibrillation flutter, which disappeared after 1 month after we implanted the pulmonary valve, which is amazing. So this lady is under follow-up now, 2 years now, she's doing well. So this is a quick example of patient which something can go wrong also. A 6-year-old boy who had retrograde fallow and is suitable for a pulmonary implantation. He has got symptoms of EC fatigability. We did a CT scan, and even the ECG shows a QRS duration of 150, and echo showed moderate RV dilatation. But the MRI value shows EDV of only 258, 136 compared to his body weight, slightly less than what the recommendations are. But since he has been having symptoms, we proceeded with the pulmonary implantation. So again, we went for the cardiac CT to look for landing zone. You can see the huge RVOT. There was no landing zone near the RVOT, but towards the bifurcation there was a landing zone. So you can see towards the bifurcation, there's a landing zone, which is about 2 centimeters from the bifurcation. I chose this position to put a valve. So we did angiograms now to show the RVOT, and you can see that the narrowest point is very close to the bifurcation. So we did balloon dilatation as you are sizing, and you can see that both sides in the LAO and the RAO view, we got about 28 at the narrowest point, and the simultaneous angiogram didn't show any flow across the PA, which means the tight seal is there. So what we usually do is we size it from there to 20% more than the balloon size in diameter to put a valve to give enough radial strength to anchor this valve. So we took the valve,
and you can see the valve being taken across RVOT, but there's a difficulty in passing the valve across RVOT. You can see different techniques, and this balloon tip was hitting on the RV myocardium and is not allowing to go. We tried different maneuvers, but still not going. And one of them suggested that I should partially inflate the proximal end of the balloon. This we do mostly in aortic implantation, but I don't think it will help here. We tried that technique also, but still didn't work. Next, we went for this balloon sliding technique. One balloon across into the from the opposite groin, and inflate the balloon into the middle of RVOT. Once the balloon was inflated, you can see the balloon inflated in the RVOT. Then one operator slightly pulls the balloon back and deflating balloon, and then I push the valve simultaneously. Once we do that, the valve slides up because there is no muscle there to hold your balloon. So once I did this valve pushed it forward. You can see the valve pushed forward. Now it will go up. As the deflated, it went up. Yes, that's a jump. So I went inside, went in the position. Now, actually, this is a nightmare for me that day. You know, whatever I do, the things are going wrong. We kept the valve in position, but as the balloon was inflated, you know, it pushed the valve down, and the balloon wasn't inflating evenly. But I continued. The good thing about this balloon, actually, there's got two edges which holds the valve in position, so the valve didn't melt down into the RV. So I went for the entire inflation up to 32. We added up around 10 ml more also. I want to jam this valve across the RVOT. So I just add up 10 more ml with the side sport so that I can get it. And then actually, in fact, we have burst the balloon. We took the balloon off. So that's the valve position pose. You can see the valve is jammed into the proximal part of the RVOT, but stable position, there's a free pulmonary regurgitation was happening. And the valve wasn't functioning well. So we are worried about whether if I take one more navigator, it will push this valve up into the PA or embolize the valve. So I took a check run of taking an empty navigator across into the stent. So it aligns the valve in position and it just looks good. So we took the valve across. Now the valve is across, second valve is across. And the important point I want to tell you is, you can see a nose cone. The balloon starts from there. There's not much space in the bifurcation. As the balloon inflates, it pushes the valve down. You can see the valve is down. It was happened before. Now what it is, I have to slowly push the valve back, jam the proximal part inside into the PA, and then slowly inflate. It took a long time. It just means that you should have a very experienced second operator who can work in tandem to do this valve implantation. So we took a long time, but we finally got the valve in position. Then we went for the full inflation. You can see that now that we have one proximal end, the position I wanted to be happen, and you can see nice position of the valve. And post implantation, there is no PR, there is no permissionosis, and the valve in position. So this is a paper in press choosing the appropriate size. What we recommend is, once you balloon dilate, if you have landing zone more than that, 23% should take to have a stable valve position. We done published three. After that, we done about 7 cases so far, and we have good results. Our experience, this is a paper we published. So what we say is, the only reliable feature is balloon sizing. Once you balloon size this RVOT, then size it, and you can do it. And MyVal position.
Wrap it up, we're running very late.
15 cases in stented conduit and 9 cases in ATPIVs done so far with good results. And this is the publication done recently with the multi-center with Dr. Shokman, everybody. And we've shown that this valve is versatile and can be used. So that's the flow chart, which says is native PA up to 30 you can use, and for RVOT you can use for linear PP stenting. So in summary, growing number of post-op patients, we need to have a valve. Surgical results are very good, but still then the morbidity is high. Cost of imported valves are very high. MyVal is really giving us a good platform, and native PAs can be done without pre-stenting. And you should do a meticulous CT scan to assess it. And final question for people is, should we really wait for the RV dilator 165? Should we look at the RVOT more than the RV volume? Because if RVOT goes more than 29, 30, we have to go for surgery. Should we need to give a patient an option before the RVOT goes more than 30? That's no question, because we go for only the RV size. Why can't look at RVOT also and give an option to the patient, because they have to go for surgery if in case they can't have a higher RVOT less than 30. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muthukumaran. There is a wonderful presentation, and you have